Hello, hello.
Hey guys, it's Jet. Just wanted to say hi. We're doing a test here with Samuel and Thomas.
Hello.
Samuel's from Audiospace and Thomas is from.
Audiospace.
All right, cool. So Audiospace is a really cool group. I ended up, checking them out about 6 weeks ago. We met at this local coffee shop in Echo Park, which is in Los Angeles, and we met a lot of different people. And then a couple weeks after that, Samuel had a meetup that focused in on songwriting. So a bunch of different groups, maybe 8 to 10 groups of 4 people, created a song, a 3-minute song, and they did it different ways. So the group that I was in was working with instruments, guitar and bass, and then we had a vocalist. But other people were strictly electronic music or making beats and hip hop on iPads and computers, or there was a mixture of guitars and kind of instruments with electronic instruments and electronic music. So it turned out really good. Everybody's song was really diverse, and it was really showcased everybody's you know talents and stuff. And it was really good to have some cross platform talents and everything. And everybody did real good. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to Samuel and Thomas.
Hi, my name is Samuel. I head Audiospace, and what we do is we have different meetups for musicians and artists, and songwriters, and we put them. We also have recording sessions where we essentially group people into pretty diverse groups based on their genres, what instrument they play, what role they play in a recording session, and then we kind of get them to essentially just go make music. And in the future we'll have our latest thing is doing showcases and shows, and we'll have a show February 29th at the Office Bar, 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. And hopefully that'll be a kind of a rocking time. We'll get that started, and in the future do bigger and better live shows.
Awesome, great. Thomas, tell us about your background and what interests you and your association with Audio Space.
So my background is when I was younger, I worked at a music studio and learned under a pretty prominent music producer. I tried music myself and tried to build a community out here. wasn't really successful. Took some time off. Life happened, but then when I saw a friend introduce me to Sam, I found that Audiospace was a really unique group of people and something needed in the music community. So it made sense just to join because there's very like-minded people who want to just make really good music, not deal with any of the Hollywood mess, and just get together, be a community, but also make really good music. And so that's why I've joined and been supporting and assisting. And yeah, I'll be DJing at the show too. So it's been awesome.
Awesome, great. That sounds really great. Yeah, it's really interesting to see something like this, especially, from my experience, it's hard to find musicians. And then, some people are pro and they want to pay for play and this, and they have all these different restrictions. And a lot of people are just plain flakes and unreliable and don't have their shit together. So, coming to find Audio Space was really helpful towards me. And, I got to like play some real music, and people were easy to talk to and stuff. You didn't have to go through all these different things or big egos or anything. So yeah, tell us more about like how you got the idea for Audio Space and how you put it together, and some of the inspirations and stuff throughout your life and things that led to Audio Space.
Yeah, so I mean, growing up, I was in a bunch of orchestras, and I used to play the violin, viola. The conductors hated me because I was just a rambunctious kind of teenager. I actually got kicked out of both orchestras because when I switched over to viola, I remember the violin was just too screechy for me. So I was like, I need a deeper tone instrument. And when I got to the viola, I was like, this is boring as hell. You only get to play the harmonies. That's like, 4 notes per measure. And I'm like, God damn, I could not deal with it. So I used to essentially sit in the viola section and play the violin section. I would transcribe the violin section, and the conductors did not like that. Granted, makes sense. I was in the wrong place, playing the wrong thing. But kind of went to college. I did a little bit of DJing there. I always had a love for music, and I always just wanted to make really good music. And when I moved to New York for a little while, I tried to really do kind of producer stuff. I was out there, meeting a lot of different musicians and talking to different artists and all that stuff. And it was cool for a while, but it was also extremely difficult to kind of get past the whole, hey, I meet you, I'm on Instagram, and afterwards you kind of really just don't talk to them anymore. And it was just a little bit frustrating to me. So I think once I moved back to LA, I was like, fuck going out to go meet people. Why don't I just make a thing where people come here and meet me, and we can all just go make music together? And then that kind of blossomed into Audiospace, and that the whole thesis behind it was always kind of like, you leave your ego checked at the door. You are here to kind of go make music and do the best kind of art that you can. I always tell people, it's like, if you call yourself an artist, you should go make the fucking art. And I think a lot of people miss that mark a lot of times, especially in today's time. There's a lot of like, oh, I should go make content and all this stuff. And yes, you should do all that stuff, but there's also a crucial point, which is also make the art, right? And that was kind of like a driving thing for me in terms of trying to make these meetups or recording sessions or shows. It's always like, I think of it like a pipeline. You first come in through the meetups. I don't charge anyone nothing. It's usually just like, hey, come meet up, see who's in the community, who's kind of talking to each other, what do they do, and all that stuff. And then that funnels into kind of recording sessions. So I personally do all the kind of A&R kind of things where I group people based on their genres and their experience levels and what roles that they play in a recording session. And then that now falls into the show aspect of it, where now people are making a lot of music in this recording sessions, and people are proud of what they made, and hopefully that kind of translates into a live session where we've kind of picked people out. It's like, oh, you guys are making really good music. How about you go play this music out loud now? Let's go try to get a show together.
Yeah, one of the things for me that I thought was really good, it was easy to talk to people, and I kind of really jived with people. You had mentioned a couple things that I found interesting, and one was like, leaving your ego at the door and none of the Hollywood stuff, which is really good. But one of the things, too, is that, there's a lot of guys out there and girls, too, that, really don't really know much about music. They know how to play, they've been playing, or they, what we call couch noodlers with guitar. They noodle and they couch. But, they don't really get out. They don't really have any aspect. And I mean, I used to be a couch noodler for a long time. I played in like some bands, like when I was younger as a teenager. And then I got more into bands when I was like in my mid to late 20s. So, but we played our last show I played my last show really with a real band in 1996. And then, I went and did an IT career. And then from there, like a couple of years later, around 2000, 2001, I got the Roland drum set, and I had a place where I could play it. And so I started getting back into that. And then, I'm a multi-musician, so, I played guitar and bass. So I ended up buying this thing, which I still have. It's called a Korg D1200. And up here in my studio, I have an actual old Porta studio from like 1993 or 94. It's a 4-channel. I need to get that serviced. But I started playing the instruments myself because I didn't really have a band. And, when I started getting back into music a lot, especially around, 2008, 2009, I met some people on Meetup and would do some different like Meetup groups, but there was really nothing that was solid or anything like your groups where you really had like some consistency and then a jam. And then, I kind of like died out, just, play guitar here or there, couch noodle. And then about like 10 years ago, I started wanting to get more serious about guitar, and I joined the Meetup, and they had the guitar group and the Los Angeles guitar, and I started playing with different groups, and there was different kinds of guitar people. So you have like people like me where they're just kind of like put it together, jam, I don't really care about your skill level, because I know a lot of people are beginners, and that's one of the things with a lot of people that are couch noodlers. they might not have the confidence or whatever. They'll feel stupid getting around professional people. But if they get around people who are like-minded like them, and maybe aren't like so good, right? But they're they practice and they do stuff. Getting around that kind of element can like start to snowball, and people could start really growing. And that kind of stuff was I started finding with the guitar groups. But getting back to the guitar groups real quick, there was different kind of guitar groups. There was me kind of like jamming with people, and then there was people who were like real strict with like sheet music, and you had to follow all these songs and do that. There were some other ones that were pretty cool, like the Beatles group and stuff. They have about 50 people that went out to the Rose Bowl, and I think they do it at a bar now. But they sing all the Beatles songs, and they have the whole complete book. But I'm saying, like, for a lot of people, especially since the pandemic, really meeting people and meeting quality people and people who are really interested in what you're interested in are also like people that you want to hang out with. Because through some of the music groups too that I met and stuff, I met people who were like, they played guitar, they were a guy, and you like guys and guitars, right? But they were different, so I didn't make really a friend with them, or I didn't feel like there was a community. But with the audio space, I felt like there was a community, and I felt something really strong that I hadn't felt really since like the 80s or 90s, where there was like building like a scene and a group of people that were all kind of moving together. And that's kind of what's missing about music. So if you can like elaborate more on like those kind of things, that would be great.
Yeah, I think to your point about like building a scene, that's definitely exactly on the nose on that. Kind of, I think one of the things that was missing, at least for me, growing up, I've always had an affinity to make music, and I've really loved music since day one. But my parents are not musicians. I'm a first generation, American here, and that being said, it's like it's really hard to kind of find your group and your niche when, my family doesn't really have much of roots down here. So it's kind of me trying to fiddle my way around. It's like, oh, what am I interested in? Oh, I'm interested in this. Let's go dabble in this. And, that's kind of turned into me having a whole bunch of various different hobbies and various different interests and all that stuff. And having, having made Audio Space, it's kind of like, our first meeting was like, it was four people, it was me and three other people. So, there was a real chance of it never taking off. And I'm very glad that there are people now that, like yourself, that have, mentioned to me, it's like, oh, this is actually a cool thing. Continue doing it. And, and now we have.
Well, that's one of the things too that it seems like what you're building is you're not just building like a group of musicians, you're building almost loyalty, where people are loyal to each other, not because they want anything, but because they share the same goal and they have the same kind of like principles, and that's the thing, is like you find like what we call repeat customers, people that want to come back because they feel comfortable and they feel at home. So I mean, those kind of things are great. But go on, keep telling us more.
Yeah, I think just going back to like the building a scene kind of thing, growing up in LA, you had I'm really into hip hop and rap and all that stuff, and R&B and all that stuff. And you see groups like Odd Future, for example, like Tyler the Creator and all the internet and all that stuff. And like, they were just teenagers, and they were just having fun, and they were just making music all the time, doing cool stuff. And I think one of the driving factors for me was always like, do cool shit. And how do I do cool shit? Well, okay, I can do all these things, but I can't all do all of them myself. And yes, there are people that can do all this themselves, and I'm not one of them, And I know my limitations, and I know like what I can handle and what I can do. And it's like, to my point, it's always kind of like, if I were to build something where everyone that wants to be included can be included, and also if you have the drive and you have the kind of I guess the wantingness of to create something, there's always, I think artists always have like that itch of creation. It's like, like when I'm at home and I don't have anything to do, I'm always like, man, what the fuck do I do with myself? Well, I guess I'll go make some beats, or I guess I'll go hit up someone and let's go do a recording session or something like that. And it's always been that kind of thing. And now that we're doing these shows, it's always like I was also inspired by things like Low End Theory, where they were also just a whole bunch of friends that were putting on other friends, and they were like, hey, come and play at the show, and now that even though they've disbanded since COVID, like a lot of those people that have played at that show are huge producers, are huge artists, are huge musicians, and all that stuff. And I've always kind of like geared myself towards that because I know that it's like it takes a community, you know what I mean? And I think that's one of the things I want to do.
That's cool that you mentioned the airliner and low end theory. I used to go there, sometimes about, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. I think they started about then. There were some of the people like Gas Lamp Killer, and I can't remember. There was some
Flying
sweet, I want to
Lotus.
say some Swedish guy or whatever. But I mean, the low end theory was used to do on the YouTube channel too. But I didn't go all the time. I went every now and then because I work super early in the morning. But it was like really great, and it was everybody was smoking out, and it was like really a cool thing. It was like the great Wednesday night. So yeah, that's interesting that you met that and talked about that. So I don't know a lot about it. I went there, maybe about 5 or 6 times, but I mean I can sense like what you were saying, and a lot of those people that went there, really worked with beats and things. Something I don't really know about, but I'd like to learn. But I can see that, and that's one of the things too that, like in today's day and age, or for the last like 15 to 20 years, as I was mentioning, being a multi musician and getting something like the Korg D1200 and being able to make my own music. I mean, things like that weren't really possible when I was growing up. You just had like a regular cassette tape, and then you had like a record player, and then you try to play your instruments. And today you have like a whole wide range, and that really levels the playing field for people today too. Because back, when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, you needed a big record producer, and you needed to have all these CDs and whatever. But you know, starting with things like MP3s and stuff, you had the ability to then make music and distribute it, put it on the web, tell your friends about it. And then, a few years later, like 2005, 2006, YouTube came out. And that was like one of the real levelers. Now, you can do like what we're doing, making our own videos, homemade videos, or however you want to call it. You don't need a whole production thing, but you could get yourself out there. And I think, with Audio Space, just getting more and more exposure, will start moving people out of like Los Angeles and start attracting people from different things. And as mentioned too, with the technology boom, you can start working with people like around the world and stuff. And those kind of things really would open up a whole huge giant thing, not only for you as an individual, as an artist or a musician, but also too for Audio Space and all the people that are associated with Audio Space. Can you tell us about like some of the things that you envision for Audio Space, and up in the next coming like 6 to 12 months, and then something that you might see like Audio Space doing in like 3 to 5 years? I mean, I know like just from my experience, and I've never been a rock star, and never was like anything like that associated with music, but I worked in the 90s in startup companies and stuff, and then I worked for a big company called Nortel Networks. And one of the things too, and especially like things like Audio Space, is that they can just come like an avalanche. Like one day you're a nobody, and then all of a sudden people start hearing about you, and then they start checking you out, and then they can see you, they can hear you. Then once they start seeing you and feeling you, and now they feel like that you're a part of them. So those are ways to like really work. But how would you like envision Audio Space in those time frames, the 6 to 12 months, and then the 3 to 5 years, and then maybe even beyond that, like let's say like 20 years? It's a little bit far out, but I mean, you're still a young guy, you know. So I mean, 20, 30 years you'll be around, and tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think within the next year or so, especially like the stuff that me and Thomas have been working on. I think a lot of it is like music distribution, licensing, things like bigger shows. We're always going out trying to talk to different venues, talk to different bars, and really honestly just putting boots on the ground. I think a lot of people really ask me sometimes, it's like, oh, how do you do this, or how did you land these partnerships, or how do you get these connected to these people? And it's really like we just go out and talk to people, honestly. Like we there's really no trick to it. It's just like if you have something you want to go do, you just go do it, and then you figure it out as you go along. Like when we first started the show, were we ready to do a show? Probably not. Are we ready now? More so than ever. You know what I mean? And these things are always kind of like, hey, even though you're not maybe 100% ready, or maybe all the cards are not aligned or anything like that, like it always means more to me to just go do it and figure it out, because it's like you can spend, and I've seen so many people, they spend their whole like lives, or they spend so much time just thinking about like, oh, if I do this and I do that, then I could do this. But it's like, no. Why don't you just go try it out and do it, and then figure it out if it works or not? Because if it doesn't work, well, no harm done. You could try it again later on. You know what I mean? And I think it's within the next 6 to 12 months, it's kind of like a lot of that. We're gonna go talk to a lot of different venues. We're gonna talk to a lot of different places, different studios. Different labels, publishers, whatever like that. Whoever we can get in contact with is fair game for us. I think one of the things is like, since we are quite new, it's like building and establishing ourselves as, a place where artists come and make music, and they make really good music, and artists can come and, essentially fit in right away, because we have such good vetting processes and good kind of a mentality behind, like, hey, we just want to make good art. And if we can make good art, then we can grab a whole bunch of other different creatives together, and we can be like, oh, let's go make this one day. Oh, let's go make this one day. Oh, we're missing these types of people. Let's go find people. Let's go find the exact type of people that we need to go find. So, like, for example, even we were just at USC the other week, and we were like trying to search for essentially people to help us film for the performances and all stuff. And I don't have any connections to any filmers or anything like that, but we just went out to go do it. And then thankfully now we're partnering with some kids at USC that are more than willing to help us do it. Whether it is to pad the resume, whether it is to do an interesting project or anything like that, it all comes to serve the purpose of go create something. And even looking beyond that kind of thing, I think even like past this year or past 2 years or something like that, I see this growing into a bigger record label, and trying to find people that have the same goals and aspiration. And for me, I don't try to sell a dream. I try to sell the hustle, because I myself, I work a lot. I'm always trying to think of new and interesting things to do, whether it is a selfish reason or whether it is for the betterment of the people around me. It's kind of like I just try to go do interesting stuff. And thankfully now it's kind of like, once we kind of get this first performance kind of said and done, it's kind of like, oh, now we have a repertoire. We can start building a repertoire of like, hey, we've done this, this, and this, and this, and we have all this going on. Would you like to come do something with us? And it's always kind of like a forward moving momentum kind of thing. So you don't want to slack one time and let the momentum die out, because as you can see with a lot of artists also, they might blow up off of something, and they don't have a good follow through, you know what I mean? And they die out. And that's, it's a tragedy sometimes, but it's also, maybe it is just what happens, And I think for me, it's kind of like, keep the momentum going, keep the drive going, keep the people that are involved at hustling all the time and really driven in order to, like, oh, you want to go do that, let's go find a way to do that.
That's exactly what you need. But you remember too, and you need like strategic thinkers and people too. Like I've found out through like different projects and things that I worked on, and a lot of it is real similar to you, is I'm a do-it-yourself, and just like with music and things like that, it's harder for me to find the right kind of people to do what I want to do, or even the same like thinking, or like I could tell one guy something and he would just never understand, and then I could tell you something and you could be on the same page. It's a lot harder to find like the people who are on the same page. But I can definitely see how you have your worker bees, and then you can get your strategic thinking and start like working with different people who have like different skills. Maybe they don't do the daily hustle, but they have one piece of advice, or they have one like little thing that just helps you like grow phenomenally. Now, this sounds kind of funny and materialistic, but one thing that helped me grow is when I bought like a real Les Paul. I spent like 2 grand on it, but I mean, I felt like I was like in the big leagues, and not necessarily saying the Les Paul made me a better player, but it gave me that oomph to really kind of take more chances and kind of, you know, kind of tread areas. And then doing that kind of gave me more confidence. And then I bought the Les Paul, and then I got the Marshall, and those things kind of fit together like a glove. I mean, that's, a professional setup. And, it was, but I mean, not that I'm a professional musician, and, I might not play that good, but I'm saying it was like that kind of thing. And I can totally see like where you do that. So getting back to that and your motivation, where do you get like your motivation and stuff? Like some of the places I do is actually I've been getting back into like Tony Robbins. Um, you know, some of the stuff's a little hokey but I mean his message and everything is like really it really motivates you, and he tells you some of these like thoughts and about how to like rethink things and how to like put these kind of different philosophies to like grow bigger. And a couple other people I really love, Jen Sincero. She has the Badass books. You should check them out. They really help me, especially with making money and building a lot of confidence. And then I like different kinds of things where I would learn about that. Tell me some of the mentors and people who've like really helped you get to this position and this way of thinking and this line of action.
I think in terms of mentors, I didn't really have much mentors growing up. I would say I was always kind of I guess, in limbo most of my life in terms of trying to find what actually inspired me and what I could do. And I would say for most of my life that it was kind of like figuring out, feeling out in the dark and all that stuff. I think a lot of it also revolves around the fact that my parents, immigrated here and we didn't have much of roots kind of thing. So for me, it's always been like, what can I do to, further myself in life, or what can I do to do more interesting stuff while also being able to support myself. I think one of the things that really kind of drove me to kind of take action the way I do now and to have that kind of focus and those kinds of aspirations has just been the fact that now that I see my parents kind of getting older. I think for me at least, big part of growing up was also humanizing my parents and realizing that they're also people. And I think you don't really realize that when you're a kid and all that stuff. And for me, it's like while I'm growing up, kind of thing. I see them more as people now, and like I'm like, okay, you have done all these things, and my parents have done so many different businesses throughout their time. We've everything from retail businesses, from like selling, we were a stand at the mall, to having a restaurant, to doing warehousing and all that stuff. So like I've had so many different exposures to different businesses, and the only thing that was really consistent between all of them was the fact that my parents hustled, and the fact that like my parents were like, hey, we're here with nothing. Let's go do something out of it. You know what I mean? And that's always been, now I really hold that true to my heart, and I really focus on kind of like, hey, if you want to go do something and you want to, make music and support yourself making music. And, it's a notorious industry for not being able to support yourself, right? You don't really hear that many people being able to kind of support their livelihood with music and all that stuff. And I really wanted to kind of make my way through that. And I'm always thinking, it's like, okay, what kinds of things can we do to make this sustainable? Because like for me, I come from a background, and in my previous career, I worked in finance, and I've worked at banks, and I've worked in fashion industry, and now I'm a software engineer. So I've done various different types of roles also, both technical and also non-technical roles. And now that I'm kind of like in my position now, I'm like, okay, I know all this stuff. how can I make something out of it, and how can I make something unique out of it? You know what I mean? And I'm finding myself leveraging all these different skills that I've learned in the past, whether it's, talking with different executives at banks and all that stuff, and that's kind of the soft skills, or stuff like technical skills like building a website or something like that, or building specific projects, that utilize technology and all that stuff, or, even with the meetups kind of thing. That, I would consider myself more of an introvert, and I tell Thomas all the time I would prefer to be in the background, like sort of like a Rick Rubin type of thing. But I know that might be corny, but I'm like, I really don't really care for the spotlight, to be honest with you. I think for me it's kind of like, if I can see something blossom and I can see something grow, that means more to me than anything else. And like, I don't need to be the center of the limelight. I can have the artist go play, their stuff, and I could just be the sounding board, and I could be the platform for them to grow off of. I think that means so much more to me than, oh, hey, here comes Samuel, he blah blah blah, he's the main guy, blah blah blah. Like, that really doesn't mean that much to me. I think it means more to me when people are like, oh, I have met here, and I went to go make an album or something. I met here, and I went to go do this and this, and they come to me and like, oh, I want to go do this. How can we go do this? And I'm like, okay, let's go figure this out. Let's go step 1, step 2, step 3, and all that stuff. And I think it's like, I think to your point, having a really focus and also methodical and strategic approach is really important. I'm very inspired by different startups as well. One of the things I always tell Thomas is like Y Combinator and all that stuff, which is like a really big Silicon Valley tech startup kind of thing. But I really take those ideals to heart when there's a famous saying called "do things that don't scale," especially in the beginning. And what that really means to me is like, go put boots on the ground and go talk to people. Go network. Go things that honestly, like when it means that don't scale is like, I can't have another person, I can't have another me go out there, right? I can't have another Thomas go out there. That's not scalable, you know what I mean? But right now, it's more important to have that personal connection because we don't have anyone else, right? So you have to do things that don't scale, and I think that really means a lot to me.
Well, in closing here, we're running short on time, coming to the end here. I want to thank you guys for coming here and telling us your story. Um, Let everybody know how they can get in touch with you and how they can get information about the meetups and, the best way to contact you, and tell us, where you guys are going to be performing and what kind of things you have coming up in the next, few weeks, and people can check you out.
Yeah, so our Instagram is Audiospace HQ or Audiospace Live. You can also visit us at our website at audiospace.live. We're going to be doing our first show at the Office Bar, February 29th, end of the month, 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. And we'll have, some amazing artists that we've done like recording sessions at, from the meetups that we've done so far. And we've also, we're also partnered with pirate.com, which is a record. They're kind of a studio, and they're based out of the UK, but they have studios out in LA. And, they've really graciously helped us with, providing us rehearsal time, providing us with, recording studio time and all that stuff. And they've been really great partners to kind of grow with, and they really understand and kind of believe in our vision. I think in the next couple of months, for example, we're looking to, grab another venue, hopefully make a cadence of shows. So we'll have a pipeline of artists that are always recording at our recording sessions, and also then turns into, let's go play at the show. I think you're ready, or you have an album. Let's go do this at this show, and hopefully we can get some sort of cadence going with a venue and partner with someone else in that regard. But we're always kind of, I think, going back to kind of doing things that don't scale. We're always going out and talking to people, talking to venues, talking to bars to see what kind of connections we can really make. I think music is a very decentralized place right now. There's this is the land of DIYers. And, with that being said, it's like we really hope to connect the dots between everyone.
All right. Again, I wanted to thank Samuel and Thomas for coming out here. There's a lot of good space at Audiospace. Everybody's there. Just from my experience, like I had mentioned, everybody is really cool. I think, in addition to making great music, you can make great friendships, and you can feel like you're really a part of something. And I'll give you guys the Jet Spank recommendation and stamp of approval. And what was the date of your show again?
February 29th, the Office Bar, 8 p.m. to 12 a.m.
Where's the Office Bar located once again?
It's in Lincoln Heights. Lincoln Heights. He always gets mad at me because I say Highland Park, even though they're like right next to each other, but it's whatever.
All right, then. Thank you. You guys have a great day. Jet Spank. Catch us on Twitch. Like and subscribe to the channel. Share it with your friends, and get ready for Audiospace. All right. Rock and roll, hip hop. We're ready for it. Peace out.